welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Jules Kort, an actor, producer, and creator of the Larry Kert Project. Welcome to the show, Jules.
Hi, Sophie. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, here's how this works. Jules will have 3 minutes to talk about something that they love. This can be a person, place, thing, constant activity, anything they want. Our only requirement is that they love it wholeheartedly and want to tell us why. Are you ready, Jules?
I'm ready.
Good. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so fricking much?
I love Larry Kert. Now, Larry Kert is a very important person to me, and he's extremely influential in the world of musical theater, and he's a very fascinating figure of the AIDS advocacy movement in the 1980s. So Larry first becomes a household name in 1957 when he originates the lead role of Tony in the first ever Broadway production of West Side Story. He then goes on to play this part for the next 3 years to riotous popularity. And he's doing something very interesting at the time as well, which is he is living very openly as a gay man. And this is endearing to many and also to some, especially other closeted artists that he works with and comes in contact with, makes him a bit of a danger, a bit of a concern. And so in 1961, the now famous film version of West Side Story comes out. And to the surprise and disappointment of many fans of Larry and Larry himself, he's not involved in the movie. He is not cast as Tony. And when they decide to dub over the Tony actor with a different singing voice, he's also passed over for that, much to his chagrin. And after that, his career does not enjoy the same level of commercial success and public notoriety that he had during West Side. The next few shows that he has, they are closing after one opening night or in previews without ever officially opening. And in the meantime, he's throwing himself into a mix of teaching and creating his very popular nightclub act, working off Broadway, working on tour, working around the country. But also in this time, three essential things are happening. Firstly, he's becoming a darling of DC, frequently being brought into the Capitol to give command performances for presidents from Eisenhower until Bush. Second, he's deepening his relationship with Stephen Sondheim and becoming one of Sondheim's most frequent collaborators, where Sondheim will call Larry over to his apartment and test out new material with him. And third, he stars as a replacement Cliff Bradshaw in the original Broadway production of Cabaret, where he becomes very noted for a specific talent that he has, which is very active listening on stage, which all culminates in 1970 when his star rises once more as he takes over for Dean Jones as Bobby in the original production of Company. And suddenly he's a Broadway and television darling again, but with a new kind of maturity and grandiosity and charm. And also around this time, he meets the love of his life, Ron Pullen, a mosaic artist, wrestler, and political activist. And they become the definition of soulmates and have a lovely relationship. And after,
Go ahead and finish your thought.
right. So Ron and Larry enjoy many years together that ends unfortunately very early when Larry and Ron both are diagnosed with HIV and AIDS, and Larry passes away very early at the age of 60 in 1991.
That's fascinating. Thank you for telling us about Larry Kert today.
Absolutely. I love talking about Larry.
So I do want to give you a chance. I know there was definitely more thoughts following than that because you mentioned at the start of your talk that Larry Kert was very much a figure in AIDS advocacy, and it sounds like this story, that the unfortunate, tragic trajectory of his love story may, I can only assume, had a hand in that.
Absolutely. Larry was involved in this series of events called the Big Splash, where every year out in California, he would gather his Broadway friends and they would perform in these concerts to raise money for the AIDS Service Foundation. And they managed to raise millions of dollars. The foundation and the event itself raised millions upon millions upon millions in the length of its existence, but Larry specifically contributed a lot to that number.
It sounds like overall, Larry's story as a celebrity, as a public figure, is a story of someone who is very aware of his platform. And as it ebbs and flows, and as certainly he had to know that there are, risks to being so open about his identity and what was important to him, but he had faith that he could use his platform for good and to help people like him.
He was very much aware of the power of his platform. In fact, towards the end of his life, he was slated to perform for President George H.W. Bush. And leading up to the event, the symptoms of his HIV and AIDS, his KS, his wasting syndrome, they had taken a very visible physical toll on him to the point where his tuxedo for the event had to be taken in several times to fit his new slimming frame. And he had planned to start this event with a call to action, a plea directly to the president to devote more resources to AIDS research. And he was going to, in this little speech, include personal facts about people he loved who he had lost and the fact that he himself was actively dying from the disease,
Hmm.
which at that point, it was still very much a big deal to say that on a national televised platform for any celebrity. And whether because the administration got wind of that this speech was planned, or simply they didn't want someone who was visibly, obviously suffering from this disease that they were actively ignoring. They cut him from the program at the last possible second. He was literally in the wings with his scene partner about to walk on the stage, and they sent her out and pulled him back and they sent him home. And within the next few weeks, he had passed.
When you were describing his career and the way that, he was popular at this time and then shunned at this time and popular at this time and shunned. It's right up until the very last moment the world was so fickle towards him.
Absolutely. And to be fair, the world was fickle to a lot of people like Larry at that point, but not all of the world. Larry was a very beloved matinee idol who was very popular in the television and musical theater spheres. He was a darling of the American public from the time he blew up in 1957 until he passed. The people who shunned him were commercial entities and political entities.
How did your interest in Larry Kert begin?
My interest in Larry Kert began on an evening when I was having a pretty bad day and wanted to make myself feel better. So I was scrolling through YouTube, watching different video clips of people sing Maria from West Side Story because it's one of my favorite songs,
Hmm.
and a piece of rare footage of Larry singing it in 1982. So a couple decades after he had finished playing the role the first time. And he walked out in this grand tuxedo on this giant stage and delivered one of the most epic and moving performances of a piece of music I had personally ever seen. And it became my new obsession. And I would watch it multiple times every day for the following weeks. And I decided that I had to know more about this person. So I began my research. And the more I dug into Larry's catalog of work, his history as an artist and as a person, his relationships with his family and his friends, I became really fascinated in what I could do to honor this man and also share his story that I found so fascinating and resonating with other people, which is why I began the Larry Kert Project, where half of it is a research initiative led by myself and a number of other artists in collaboration with Larry's surviving family and friends. And that research then influences this series of cabaret shows that we put on in New York City and around the country when possible, that we showcase Larry's music and his work through the lens of telling these stories of his life.
What's something that surprised you over the course of your research?
I think something that surprised me over the course of my research was his work with The Big Splash and this story with George H.W. Bush, because this information is very much only available from firsthand accounts of people who were there. It's not readily available on internet research of Larry. If you were to go based on just what comes up on the surface of a quick Google search, the internet would have you believe that Larry was diagnosed with AIDS in the early to mid 80s and immediately stopped working and wasted away in obscurity until he passed in 1991. But when you look deeper, what is actually true is he delivered some of his most iconic performances of his career in those final years, and he raised millions in research funding and promoted the cause of AIDS advocacy to thousands upon thousands of people. And he performed in New York and around the country leading up until his final month of being alive. And that surprised me because that's something that I had to come to learn through deeper research.
Tell me a little more about these cabaret shows you've been putting on with the Larry Kert Project.
The Larry Kert Project first did a performance dedicated to Larry for his 95th birthday, and it was an immense success. And so we were asked to restage the show the following year on a very special day, June 5th, 2026, the first Friday of Pride Month for this year, and it is the 35th anniversary of Larry's passing. And that is the day that we will be gathering a group of artists and loved ones, friends and family, and members of the community to perform more music from Larry's iconic catalog, tell more stories of his life, share never before seen photos, and most importantly to me, we will be raising money to support foundations and teams that are actively working in healthcare advocacy and legal aid for LGBTQ plus individuals and individuals in the immigration system.
It seems like the best way you can honor and contribute to someone's legacy is to not only celebrate the art that he was known for, but also to zero in on the aspects of his life that people didn't know and the work that he really strove to do in the latter part of his life, and to continue that work, to continue to raise money, continue to raise awareness, and to mix all of that together into a beautiful theatrical thing that is also educational, that's also doing real good in the world. That's a complicated thing and a truly inspiring thing.
Thank you. Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. That is the exact goal of this project, and it is I'm very grateful and very lucky to all of the people who have brought their own individual talents and skills and stories to this project that is essentially a collection of archival research into this wonderful man and his amazing life.
Is there anything that you haven't been able to accomplish yet with the Larry Kert project that you have as goal for the future?
A future goal for the Larry Kert Project is that in 5 years' time, for the 100th anniversary of his birth, which will coincide with the 40th anniversary of his passing, a much larger scale show. Each show increases in scale. The very first time we presented something for Larry, it was a few artists and someone at the piano and a couple of stories and pictures for a very small crowd. And in the time that the project has grown, we've added more artists, we've added bigger venues, we've added more stories and photos, and we've brought in celebrities from all corners of Broadway who want to share what they love and know about Larry and about Ron. And so the project continues to grow, and we continue every single day to meet new people with a story to tell about Larry and find new pieces of evidence in the archives of family photo catalogs and the New York Public Library. And the show will never stop growing, I feel. And that's one of the great joys of it, is that there's always more to learn about Larry and about everything he was part of.
Jules, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
My absolute pleasure, Sophie. Thank you.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about Larry Kert or our guest Jules, you can find their social media information in the episode description. And if you have something you love so freaking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Freaking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.